but you can actually put stuff out there professionally now if you want to, right from an early age. My name's Chapman. I'm a sports presenter, predominantly on 5 Live Sport and then on Match of the Day 2, Rugby League, NFL, whatever else the BBC want to throw my way. The FA Cup draw, there you go, that's about it at the moment, I think. I think the best way to describe it is, it's not necessarily never say no to anything, because some things it might be wise to say no to. But I think the main thing is never close off your options, never worry whether, by going off in a certain direction, it might stop you achieving your final goal, to be honest. And therefore there are various examples, if you want to work as a sports presenter for BBC Sport or Sky, what's going to get you in the door, and if it's something that gets you in the door but isn't necessarily what you want to do, then I wouldn't worry about it at an early stage. You can, no career path, it feels to me, is like a straight line, bang, you work your way to it. There are all sorts of zigzags on the way. So I think don't close off options would be my best piece of advice. I would argue that there are probably 2 things that stand out for me, or maybe 3 actually. I think a love of sport, I think, is really important. I see a lot of people, particularly on the news side, who use a sports reporting job as a way to work their way into something else within news, maybe. And I think if you really want to nail it, I think you have to love every single sport. There is the odd sport that I'm not a massive fan of, but I think you have to love it, be enthused about it, have a passion for it. And then I think your 2 other things are be a good communicator, learn how to communicate. Sometimes it's not natural. You can learn how to communicate, and different mediums take different gifts. Being a TV presenter is different to being a radio presenter. And then I think the final thing is you've got to be interested in people. That's the key to it. You want to, it's even like sitting here and watching them out there. I kind of want to go and talk to them about what they're doing and what they're learning about coaching and analysis. And that's the thing. That's just showing interest in people and what they're doing. I think that digital media has actually changed the landscape for the better if you're starting out, to be honest with you. I think that's the biggest change. If I look back to being 15, 16 and wanting work experience, then you're not really talking about that many opportunities, to be honest with you. Local radio, and that was about it. And I did hospital radio as well. Whereas I think now the opportunities are huge for you to explore at a much earlier stage. You can even do it yourself, can't you? You don't even actually need to go to anybody. You can, if I to show my age here, but if I practiced being a presenter in my bedroom, which I did, like a music presenter in my bedroom, then that was with a vinyl record player and a cassette deck and a CD player, and you hit record and just messed about. But you can actually put stuff out there professionally now if you want to, right from an early age. So I think that's the biggest benefit of it, the opportunities it gives people, if they persevere. Again, there are sort of 2 things to presenting a whole variety of sports. The first is listen to a lot, read a lot, watch a lot, and try and take it in. And then the second thing is, in particular, it's a managing time. So at the moment, I'm in a sort of space where my NFL is done, so I can sort of have a sort of cursory glance at mock drafts and who might be looking at who and if anybody's being traded. But I'm not on NFL.com every single day trying to go through everything. But what I am doing at the moment is paying more attention to England-Wales previews for the Six Nations, because I've got that on Saturday. I'm looking more and more at the racing pages and what I can pick up on social media on the racing, because I'm doing Cheltenham next week. So you've got to manage your time to be across the different sports when you need to be across them. And then the other key to it is as well, I'm not there to be an expert on every single sport. I'm there to get the best. That's what I firmly believe my role is. I'm there to get the best out of my pundits, the journalists, my guests. You know, that is my role, to make them sell their sport to everybody else. I think the key to it is, or for me the key to it is, you talk to one person, that's it. And it's a lot easier to talk to one I think at the start anyhow, it's a lot easier to talk to one person into a microphone than it is down the barrel of a camera, but you get used to that over time. But that's the key essence to it, is one person, and make it feel inclusive, make it feel as though the viewer or the listener is part of the experience with you, that there isn't a glass screen or a wall or a speaker between you and them. That for me is the key to it. I think we're at a really interesting point with the discussion of the UK franchise, and I think it was discussed a lot maybe 5 years ago and even maybe 3 years ago. I think we're at a really interesting stage because the Tottenham Stadium is sensational. And you have 2 games at the Tottenham Stadium and you've got 2 games at Wembley. So you're talking 4 games a year in London. Now, if you had a franchise here, you're only talking another 4 games. I think it's really interesting that you have every one of those 4 games feels like an event. If you go up to 8, is everyone going to feel like an event? I think that's a question that has to be asked. And also, in my experience of this, one of the key selling points of the NFL as regards our audience is the Americana side of it. We like the American side of it. We like, people like the sport partly because of how it's done with the American angle on it. And we also all have our teams. This is, whether it be an 11-year-old who's only just started watching it because of what we're doing, or people in their 50s and 60s who watched it in the 70s and 80s because Channel 4 first started showing it. So I think there's quite an interesting question to be asked of the market over here, which is, why would you necessarily switch from supporting Chicago or San Francisco or Dallas, whoever it may be, to support a team in London? And also, I know of lots of cities, probably, and people from cities in the UK who aren't going to support a team if it has London in it because of the rivalries between, I don't know, Liverpool and London, or Manchester and London, or Birmingham and London. So I think there are quite a lot of nuances that have to be looked at, really. And also, the final thing with it, and this is a very comprehensive answer, so sorry, but the other thing you have to think about is there's more of an off-season than an on-season with the NFL. So for the 7 months of an off-season, how do you keep the interest in the London franchise? Because the structure is already there in America, because there are daily radio shows and TV shows, and the players are more than likely to live in the area of Philadelphia, for argument's sake, and therefore be readily available to still do stuff with the local media. If you have a team over here, are the players going to live over here in the off-season? I mean, an educated guess would suggest they wouldn't. So I still think there are quite a few question marks as to why you necessarily want one or need one at the moment. I think it's really interesting, the whole debate about Burrow and whether he will go to Cincinnati, and it from a British point of view, it brings this age-old question for people that sort of dip in and out of the NFL and the draft, is people still can't get their heads around what you get drafted, you don't have a say where you go. And I think that, even though I think he's tried to shut it down, and a few other people have tried to shut it down, I still think that's a really interesting narrative going forward, is whether he will go to Cincinnati. Because the more I read about it, the more, there appears to be no hope in Cincinnati whether they get him or not, compared to some of the other franchises who've had the number 1 pick in recent years.